It is 6:41 on News Talk 1130 WISN. I'm Jay Weber. It is week 3 of Judge Kavanaugh nonsense. We have a great trade deal that benefits Wisconsin. Let's call it NAFTA 2.0. And I am joined now by Senator Ron Johnson, the senior senator from the great state of Wisconsin. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great, Jay. How about yourself?
Doing well. Good to have you on. Can we take Senate Leader McConnell at face value here and believe that he and the rest of you in the caucus are very motivated to get Judge Kavanaugh confirmed and on this court? I sense no wavering in the McConnell force here.
No, really reestablishing the courts is, the Article 3 branch that really just applies the law, interprets the law is just what Leader McConnell is really dedicated to. He's done a great job. I think we've confirmed 26 circuit court judges, a bunch of district court judges, and this will be the second Supreme Court judge, so that we actually have judges, not super legislators, not judicial activists on the Supreme Court. He's dedicated to it. He's pretty good at maneuvering things. He is a Senate tactician. And, again, this 1 week pause, I know it's caused a lot of angst for an awful lot of people, but, if we move forward with the confirmation and this gives a couple senators really the confidence that their yes vote is correct, might even bring in a couple Democrat votes 2 or 3 weeks from now with Justice Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, and maybe even a couple Democrats voting for him, a bipartisan pick, that might be a good thing. So again, I'm not panicked about it. I have a hard time believing after 6 FBI investigations, I think every stone has been overturned. They may be overturning him a couple extra times. Mm-hmm. I just have a hard time thinking we're going to find anything else out that we don't already know. And let me just state the case. The bedrock principle of American justice system is presumption of innocence. And we have an allegation, and there's no corroboration for it whatsoever. Instead, you have a lifetime of exemplary service to this nation, 12 years on the bench. He's an eminently qualified judge. Even the ABA says that. So, I mean, that's what a guy like me has to evaluate. Presumption of innocence, right, and a lifetime of dedicated service and a great judge.
Right, and I was telling listeners yesterday about how, a couple of people at Fall Fest approached me and bashed Mitch McConnell, and I said, look, this is ultimately about the numbers, and if he doesn't have the numbers to approve Judge Kavanaugh, he has to, agree to certain things like this FBI investigation, and if it gives the deciding vote some confidence and some cover, that necessitates the delay. But so far this week, the extra time has only caused these allegations to fall apart. We're starting to see both Blasey Ford's original allegation and really all of these allegations. The third allegation from the Michael Avenatti accuser has really fallen apart with this new NBC interview. So this could ultimately have a backfiring effect for the Democrats. It has allowed for more time to shine a light on these accusations, and they seem weaker with every day.
Well, it also has given time to shine the light on what the Democrats did and really how despicable, in Lindsey Graham's words, their actions were. I mean, the fact is they had these allegations, and they knew that Dr. Ford wanted to remain anonymous. Somehow, her name got leaked. And, in her testimony, she said, other than the incident, this is the worst 2 weeks of her life. Well, that's the Democrats who put her through the worst 2 weeks of her life. This was such an abusive process. Jay, I'm a committee chairman. I see these FBI files. I know how this should have been handled. It should have been handled quietly. They could have gone and interviewed her in California. Apparently, these top gun attorneys of hers apparently never communicated that fact that the Judiciary Committee would have gone out to California and taken her deposition in private, which I think, according to her, would have been the best course of action here. Democrats wanted a show trial. Mm-hmm. They wanted to make a spectacle of this, and they got a spectacle. They don't care a whit about Dr. Ford from what I can see. They just wanted that spectacle. They just wanted to destroy Judge Kavanaugh, and hopefully it's going to backfire on them.
Yeah. Has Dianne Feinstein damaged her Senate legacy? And has this done permanent damage to relationships? And what I mean is, last week, Lindsey Graham, who has been all about comity and cooperation in the Senate, last week, Lindsey Graham, in his fury, alluded to Democrats as being former friends. Has this harmed relationships?
Now, my guess it certainly has revealed what the Democrats' true motives are. And when you see that, it's kind of hard to be real friendly.
Yeah, and I assume neither side of the aisle is expecting the FBI to find much or have this change much. So how obvious or overt is it behind the scenes that Democrats know this is really a farce too, and they're just playing out some theater here? Or do you think they really believe some of this stuff?
Well, again, they are trying to change the standards of our judicial system. I mean, very overtly, they say, no, it really ought to be a presumption of guilt when it's a sex crime. Let me modify that. A presumption of guilt if you're a Republican.
Right.
I mean, that's the new standard that the Democrats want to impose on all of us. And again, they're just brazen in what they're trying to do here.
One thing I'm unclear on, before we move on to trade, I just want to know, I'm unclear on this. I assume listeners are as well. If the FBI investigation is about what we expect it is and nothing really changes, and if Leader McConnell moves forward here, what would the process be for voting? Would it be 2 process votes and a final vote that would probably stretch into next week?
We're being told to stay over the weekend. So whatever the process votes are, Democrats can always yield back time or just do things by unanimous consent. You never can tell, but it sounds like you're going to have a series of votes if Democrats don't agree to some UCs and just get the thing over with.
Okay.
But Leader McConnell keeps in session here. We're being told to stay the weekend.
Okay, so on to this new trade agreement. We'll just call it NAFTA 2.0. He's calling it, the USMCA. How significant is this for Wisconsin and for the country?
Well, what's significant is we now have greater stability. What business people are looking for is certainty. And, the whole trade war, not exactly knowing what was going to happen with this trade agreement between Mexico, U.S., and Canada, which I think long-term has proven to be beneficial for all 3 countries. Since we signed NAFTA, we've increased exports to Canada and Mexico by $221 billion. Wisconsin has a trade surplus with both countries. Our biggest market in cheese is into Mexico. So I'm just glad we finally concluded this thing, updated. I think a lot of the IP protections, I think, were probably well worth updating. This is a whole new world from when NAFTA was signed. Marginally, it might be helpful to some exports of Wisconsin dairy into Canada, but the fact is America was already exporting about $600 million of dairy into Canada, importing about $200 million from Canada. So we already had a $400 million trade surplus with Canada. And let's face it, Canada does want to maintain some kind of dairy industry. It's really why most nations do view growing their own food or producing their own milk as kind of a national security issue, and why agriculture is always the stickiest issue with any trade deal. I mean, America's farming agriculture can overwhelm just about any nation, and so nations try and protect their agricultural sector, and to a certain extent you have to be somewhat sympathetic with that. But again, I think on that, it's just good that we got this thing done. I wish we would negotiate a TPP. I wish we'd conclude our negotiations with Europe, and then we can turn our attention to the real abuser of the trading system, which is China. Yeah,
exactly. And there are signs that China seems to be cracking a little bit now, but they have the ability to, with their form of government, just sort of wait out elections. So it'll be interesting to see whether China moves in any major way here. But there's already talk, the Democrats could stop this, the Democrats could stop this. Do you think Chuck and Nancy and the Democrats will see the upside to approving this next session, or are they just going to try to block it to deny the win?
All depends. I think if it were to occur before the election, they would block it. Afterwards, it may be a completely different calculus. So nobody can really predict it. From my standpoint, a deal with China should not be that difficult. They've stolen technology they need. I was in China. They are starting to leapfrog American technology. We may be behind in quantum computing and artificial intelligence. So, the things that we need to demand out of China is stop stealing our industrial military secrets. There really is less of a need for them to steal it. They are well on their way to developing their own intellectual property. So that's one of the primary abuses that they ought to be able to agree to.
Yeah, and any concessions that we used to make to China as a developing country, or we want the more stable that country is, the more stable the globe is, et cetera. Those concessions, I think, are long past, and America now needs to forcefully protect itself and its intellectual property.
Yeah, they've used that. We're a developing country, we need help. No, they're developed.
Right, they're developed.
It's true. They are still trying to lift an extra billion people out of poverty. They have enormous environmental challenges. They really should be focusing an awful lot on those 2 primary challenges, less so on militarizing the South China Sea islands and expanding their influence around the world. They really ought to take care of their issues at home. So
right.
Hopefully they'll work with us on North Korea, because let's face it, a nuclear Korean Peninsula is not in China's interest either. So our goal with China is trying to determine how do we work together. What's in our mutual best interest for both countries, and I would much rather be on a path of growing trust with China as opposed to on a path of growing distrust.
Right, and as you say, it's good that we have this new NAFTA deal done, which is really a tweaking of the existing NAFTA. It's not. I know that President Trump wants to celebrate it as a big win, and it is. They're significant. It's a significant win in one sense, but this isn't a truly redrawn trade deal that's going to erase trade deficits, et cetera. At the same time, there are good things about it. Chuck Schumer called this improved yesterday. So if they decide to block this, it's just more evidence that they only care about winning elections and having power. But one point I plan to make today on this is improving NAFTA wasn't really on the GOP wish list. It was labor union. It was a labor union and Democrat thing. So I don't know why they would spike it, only to spite Trump, I guess. So
yeah, I mean they really have gotten some labor improvements. A number of things. We haven't seen the details. Now, the offset of that, when you guarantee certain wages and that type of thing, it will probably on the margins increase the price of cars as well. Maybe make us a little less competitive globally selling our cars. So, these things aren't. In the end, it is a zero-sum game. If somebody's wages go up, somebody's price goes up as well. So, but again, I think that's pretty much on the margins until you see real strong economic analysis and actually implement it, see what happens. It's hard to say, but again, I think as you said, I think the IP protections are important, but it's more of a marginal difference in NAFTA, and I'm just glad that we have that agreement, because it's really benefited that being able to basically trade freely between America, Mexico, and Canada on most items is a very good thing. It's helped all three economies.
And it's not a mistake that the Dow rose almost 200 points yesterday, because as you started out saying, it's really uncertainty, and it was these trade wars that now loom as maybe the biggest potential negative to affect our economy. And if this is taken care of, that's one less negative. So, thanks.
I mean, stock market's pretty been just kind of up and down from its highs in January, as this administration has been rattling its saber when it comes to debt, tariffs, and trade wars, that type of thing. So, starting to conclude some of these trade deals, I think will restore the certainty that this administration has done a great job of bringing to the economy by, we stopped adding the regulatory burden and we made a more competitive tax system. So, let's get the trade issues behind us, and this economy can really take off.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time this morning. I do appreciate it, sir.
Have a great day.
That is U.S. Senator Ron Johnson here on WISN. It is 6:55.